All right, welcome. I didn't do a countdown. I just told you I was going to do a countdown. I just went right into it. My apologies. Okay, welcome to Going the Distance, the Rocky Series podcast. I'm your host, and with me today is John Messina. How you doing?
Very good, Ryan. Thank you so much for having me on. Truly appreciate it.
Well, I'm honored to have you on, and the reason why I'm honored to have you on is I'm always fascinated by people who create, who have a story to tell, have experiences to share. I just do a stupid podcast. I don't have anything. I don't have anything worthwhile to offer anybody other than a platform for people to share their real accomplishments. And you're one of those people, and I'm excited to actually hear your story for the first time. I know a little bit because we're on Facebook together. I've seen some of the stuff you shared, but I've kind of steered clear from finding out everything about you because I want to hear it with the audience as they're listening to this, your story. So I'm going to just go right into, you have filmed a documentary series or movie. Which one is it?
It's a three-part mini documentary series.
Okay, because I saw in your trailer it said series, so I'm like, okay, I thought it was a movie, but it's actually a series. Okay, good. Now, before we get into that, we're going to lead up to it. That's going to be the grand finale. I want to hear first, John, how did you become a Rocky fan?
Okay, so that's a very good question. Thank you for asking. And number one, I love podcasts. So what you're doing is not stupid. I love it. Keep it up. Great job.
Thank you.
Here we go. So my story begins actually from a very young age. I suffered from a very bad learning disability as a child and an adolescent, and I struggled very bad in school. I couldn't read. I couldn't write almost till about eighth grade, which is very late for something like that to bloom. So when I was 8 years old, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was a Friday evening. I came home from school from having another terrible day at school, and my parents sat me down after dinner, and they said to me, "We want to show you a movie." And it's not just any movie. And to us, movie night was a very big deal in my house. I grew up with Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Jaws, The Godfather.
Mm.
So every Friday was like movie night in my house. But the tone of this evening was a little bit different. It wasn't just a normal film. My parents were treating it like it was a big event. So initially, I was excited. I love movie night. I love hanging out with my parents. Number one, I had the greatest set of parents ever. Couldn't I was blessed with the best mother and father there ever could be. I can't say enough positive things about them. So my father, going back to that evening, my father goes into our the little cabinet underneath our TV set, and what does he pull out? He pulls out a VHS tape of the original Rocky, and he walks over with it as if he's holding the holy grail of movies. So he pulls it out and he emerges like he just literally found the Holy Grail. And my mother says, "This is no ordinary movie. This is a very special movie to us and our family. It inspired us from a young age, and we hope that it inspires you as well." So, long story short, we sit down, we start watching the film, and immediately I'm engrossed. I'm all in. I'm loving every second of this film. And all I can say is when it gets to that final fight, specifically round 14, and I know millions of people have spoken about round 14 because it hits everybody, deep in the heart. Um, but I saw myself in the character of Rocky, just getting down, knocked down time after time, and being counted out, and always being the underdog. And then round 14 comes, and he gets knocked down for that final time. And Mickey, his manager's telling him to stay down, and everybody in the crowd has probably counted him out. And Apollo's got his hands up. He thinks he won the fight. And what does Rocky do? He climbs to his feet. He crawls around on the floor first. He pulls himself up with the ropes and he climbs to his feet. And he turns to Apollo and he waves him in for more. That blew me away as a child. I mean, sent me to another stratosphere. And the best way that I could explain it is probably a spiritual awakening, not to sound like too artsy and weird, But it was a spiritual awakening for me. I felt like something that was not living inside me was now alive. And I remember that very vividly as an 8-year-old. And from that day moving forward, I kind of viewed all of my challenges that I ever faced from that day as an 8-year-old, all the way, I'm 43 years old now, all the way up to my age now. Every single time I face something, I still revert back to round 14. It's the craziest thing. And people that don't understand Rocky, which I can't imagine how you couldn't understand it, they don't understand it, but to me, it's something that's tremendous. So that's kind of where my story begins as an 8-year-old on a Friday night, watching a movie with mom and dad, going through a really tough time in school, and basically kind of breaking my own mold and seeing in the character Rocky the person that I aspired to be. I didn't want to be Rocky per se, but I wanted to be remembered as the person that no matter what came his way, he's going to keep moving forward and he's just going to keep coming after it no matter what happens. And that's who I always dreamed to be. So any challenge that came my way, that was the mentality going forward. And that's kind of how things started for me. Would you like me to segue into?
Well, I got a couple of things I want to say to that. First off, thank you for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely.
That was beautiful. In fact, I was listening to you tell the story about round 14, and you're such a great storyteller. And obviously, this is very personal to you, and you've probably shared this before with somebody, I'm sure, throughout your life. But hearing that from you and me visualizing the very things you're talking about, it got me that spiritual reawakening again. I totally know what you mean by that. There's two types of people in the world: those who understand and love Rocky, and those who are wrong.
Correct. 100%.
So yeah, round 14 in that film. I mean, if you don't feel something, if you don't understand that journey, then I look, I know we're all human and we have different experiences, but I kind of question people that don't see that moment for what it is. But that's that's not a criticism. I'm perplexed. That's all. Beautiful story. And I will say that I have a son who I think suffers from what you did, or maybe still do. He has dyslexia and dysgraphy. I am saying it wrong. Trouble writing, and he has dyslexia as well. So I think he struggles himself to read and write. And so I can sympathize and empathize. I didn't go through it myself, but I have a child who suffers from that, and we homeschool him because of that, because he's too far behind with the curriculum that we have to teach him differently at home than the public school system. But I can appreciate what your parents went through. So good and wonderful to hear about your love for your parents. It's always nice to hear.
Absolutely.
So now, oh, sorry, go ahead.
The best ever. I had the best parents ever.
That's awesome. Well, yeah. So let's, I'm only a couple years older than you. So I have the same kind of like family night, movie night. I have great parents too that I love very much. And so very kindred spirits here. Where are you from? You're from New York, I presume?
Yeah.
I could tell by the accent, and I think I knew by the Facebook. But yeah, I love that New York accent. It's hilarious. Give me a why I oughta.
Why I oughta.
Sorry.
Hey, how you doing? How you doing?
How you doing? Yeah, how you doing? Everyone's so friendly in New York, until you attack one of our own, we'll come and get you. We'll unite as a city. Yeah, I love that. Anyways, it's good stuff. New York City. I got to go there one day. I've never been.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So the reason why you're on the show today, of course, is your love of Rocky. Yes, but how did we segue from you as a child to a Rocky fan? Sure, now you're a full-grown adult. How did you make a documentary? This is the part that fascinates me, because no offense to you or myself, anyone could be a movie fan and feel affected by it. But there was something about this film and your own personal journey that you talked about. Now, how did that personal journey from being a Rocky fan and how you applied it to your life then go and say, I want to do XYZ with a film?
Very good question. And you're going to love my answer.
Good.
So after all my struggles as a kid, I aspired to become a teacher, which I never thought I would become. I wound up getting a bachelor's degree and then finally a master's degree. And if you would have asked me, in high school, what were you going to be? I would have never said that I would ever come back to a school building to be a teacher. But what drove me back was I always wanted to inspire, and inspiring the youth is something that is very important to me. And I find I hold very deep in my heart. So working with kids, and I'm a high school teacher, so I get to deal with, young adults on a daily basis, which is really wonderful. Um, and in addition to that, I always had this in the back of my mind. I always wanted to get into filmmaking, be an actor, things along those lines. And really, what prompted it, to be completely honest, and not to sound, cliche in any way, is my love for Stallone and what he's created. I think that just about every one of his films has an undertone of being the underdog and the underdog rising to the top. And that always struck a chord with me. Whether it was Rocky, Over the Top, Rambo, all these films hold a very special place in my heart, and really pushed me in the direction that I'm going now. So let's fast forward a little bit. So now I'm a teacher. I'm going into 20 years of teaching. When I'm not teaching, I'm working on making films, I'm acting. I've been in numerous independent films as an actor. I've written numerous screenplays. But so here's how we segue into Fight Story. My parents, who I love very much, my dad, who is my greatest hero, my mentor in life, and my best friend in reality. He was diagnosed with cancer about 5 years ago, and it was a very difficult battle, and he unfortunately succumbed to that battle.
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. But here's the special part. 48 hours before my dad's passing, he calls me into his room, and we kind of all knew it was coming close to the end, and I'm sure he knew. And he asked me if I could do him a favor. And if he knew my dad was very much a character. He was very funny, very likable. So you never kind of really knew what was going to come flying out of his mouth. So initially, when he said, "Can you do me a favor?" I'm like, "Oh boy, here it comes." But there was something about the look in his eye. I could tell that this maybe get a little serious right now. So he then proceeds to kind of pull me in close, and he says, "You have to do me a favor." And I said, "Sure, anything." And he said, "You have to run the Rocky steps for me." And that was something we had always planned on doing as a father-son together. And we'd never got the chance to do it. Unfortunately, my dad's life was cut short. He was in his mid 60s when he passed, and we never had that opportunity. And he wound up passing away 2 days after that talk. And obviously, totally devastating blow to me and my family. Um, and then we're gonna fast forward a little bit more now. About a year after my father's passing, my mom gets diagnosed with cancer as well,
Jeez.
and she wound up living for about 6 months after diagnosis. She was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer.
Oh, I'm
Um,
so sorry. Jeez.
yeah, it was a rough ride for a little bit, and she wound up passing away as well, just about a year and a half after my dad. The day after my mom's passing, my grandmother, my mother's mother, wound up passing away as well. And I attribute it to a very strong family bond that we have. And I truly believe in my heart that my grandmother didn't want to see my mother, her little girl, go alone. So which in my opinion was a very courageous move on her part. She went with her.
Hmm.
Um, so now I'm without three of the most influential people that I've ever known. And I find myself kind of starting to slip away, um, probably going into little depression,
Oh, yeah.
um,
Yeah, of course.
you know, just really struggling in my personal life, my work life, just everything is not clicking anymore. And I kind of felt like my internal flame that was lit so long ago was like slowly being extinguished. And that probably went on for about another 6 months. I was living this tough little battle with my inner self. And I remember it was middle of winter. I woke up one morning and I just had a completely different mindset, just like a mind shift. And with this shift, I remembered the promise that I made to my dad. and the promise to run the Rocky steps, which I hadn't fulfilled yet. I never fulfilled that promise for him. So I knew immediately when I woke up that morning, I got to get in my car and I got to drive straight to Philadelphia and make this happen. So now it's the middle of February. It's 20 degrees outside. I get in my car at 7 o'clock at night. I leave from New York to Philly. I get there and it's probably 10:30-ish at night. It's a complete ghost town. Like I said, 20 degrees outside. And literally it's just me and the Rocky steps for the first time in my life. I had never been there before. Have you ever been there, by the way?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so something very special happens when you go there, especially if you're a Rocky guy, or girl, if you're a Rocky fan in general. You're immediately transformed into the film because all of those sights and sounds that you see in the movie are directly in front of you. It's unbelievable.
Mm.
And that was the first thing I felt. And I'm like, oh my God, this is really special. And to have it all to myself was even more special. So I get out of my car, I literally park right in the front, which is very rare. It's usually packed. It's kind of like a Manhattan style scene down there. And I begin to make this very emotional journey to the top of the steps. But with each step that I'm taking, as you climb all 72 steps, I'm feeling like a little bit of strength is being kind of injected back into my veins. And with this, I finally make it to the top and I look out at the city of Philly and I just collapse. And I'm sitting there and I'm crying and I'm getting emotional, just thinking about, everything that's happened to me in the past year and a half and my, the loss that I endured, with my mother and father and grandmother. And as this happens, the feeling that I got when I watched round 14 for the first time as an 8-year-old, that ignition of fire in my heart, I felt that same reignition of fire sitting at the top of those steps. And with this, the idea literally hits me like a ton of bricks over the head to write a series called Fight Story, which is about people like myself who have gone through some difficult times, but made it through because of their love for these movies and the inspiration that they drew from the Rocky films. So now I'm sitting there and my tears go away. I feel like I literally can conquer the universe. This fire's burning again. And I'm like, holy crap, I got to get in my car and get to work now. So now I drive back home through the middle of the night, get home, and I start writing immediately. And it's just about 2 years ago now that happened. And now we have our first part is just about completed. And I can't tell you, Ryan, how excited I am to kind of unleash this to everybody, because I feel like my country, but the world as a whole is really going through a tough time right now, with coronavirus, COVID, and political differences that people are facing. And I think people need something like this, something that they could be hopeful about and be inspired. I think people not everyone, but I think a lot of people have forgotten how to be inspired. And it's going to take something like Rocky to bring it back. And that's my hope and my dream, is to bring to everybody's living room. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Well, that's an incredible nutshell. I don't want to take anything away from it by saying anything stupid. I feel like this is a powerful spiritual experience. So thank you so much for sharing that. I do have a couple of questions about the format of the documentary that people listening might have. How many characters, or like how many people, like these are real life people with real life struggles, how many people are we dealing with? Does each episode deal with one person at a time? And how did you find these people?
Really good question. So initially my plan was to do an episodic 15-part series of 25 to a half hour episode, 25 minutes to a half hour episode. But what happened was I put out one Facebook ad, and I put it out on a Friday evening, and the Facebook ad ran from Friday evening to Sunday evening. I think I paid $9.99 or something. And basically just recruiting people that had interest in sharing their stories, but that fit the criteria of being inspired by the Rocky films and making it through their tough times because of that inspiration. So I put that out on a Friday night. When I woke up Saturday morning, I had 250 emails in my inbox.
Wow.
By, I would say, Tuesday, 3 days later, I had about 500 emails. By the end of the week, I had over 1,000 emails in my inbox.
What? Are you serious?
I was completely blown away, and really, really blown away. I was humbled and blown away by not only people's interest, but just how many people really felt the inspiration that I felt, you know. And I'm reading all through these stories, and each one is amazing. And it became so difficult to choose, the right person. And so I immediately, for the last 6 months, I've been working on this, just reading emails, literally.
I was gonna say, I mean, I'm not to put you on the spot, but as a courtesy, you must have read each one.
I've read every single one. I would never deprive somebody of not reading an email. That's not my style. Um,
I'm gonna ask you
and
a tough question now.
I can't thank everybody enough who has sent an email. It's truly amazing, really is.
I had a tough question for you.
Please.
So, not to sound everyone's journey through whatever struggle they have is a personal journey. Here, before I get to my question, my brother, who I started this podcast with, Ruben, he suffered from he had a blood cancer in his blood, and he is a cancer survivor. He's still alive today. He's been 5 years since he's had the cancer. He's been cleared, but it's still something that he's got to, it's going to be there for the rest of his life. It's just a matter of time before it probably comes back again. But he was doing one of his radiation treatments, and somebody was in the hospital next to him for something unrelated to cancer. And they said to him, "Oh, my problem's nothing because you have cancer." And Ruben's response to the individual was, "If you have a broken ankle, you have a broken ankle. It doesn't take away from your experience of your ankle broke and it sucks and you're getting a cast. I might have cancer, but that broken ankle is still important to you because it's your broken ankle." So with that in mind, how did you decide, do I take the paraplegic because they're never going to walk again, somehow walks again, to the broken ankle? Like, because I hate to say there's a better story to tell on that, unfortunately, but I guess, how did you decide? What was the criteria that you're like, "Oh, sorry, you're not really much of a, this story is more incredible than story B"? I mean, I hate to sound callous, but if you're selling a product or if you're trying to put a product out there, not all 1,000 stories, though important to each individual, can't tell an engaging story. So what was your way of determining that?
Yeah. So here's how I broke it down. Number one, I not only read, but I responded to every single one of them.
Good for you.
And not to pat myself on the back. That's, not what I'm
No.
trying. But I just want to make it clear that that's the type of person that I am. The criteria for me, because I'm making a film and I switched my format from 25-minute to a half hour to feature length. I'm going to do a 3-part, hour and 15, hour and 20-minute feature length film on, it's probably going to be about 5 to 6 stories per part, per 3-part. And for my criteria, number one, the story that I read had to be good. It had to be engaging. It had to be relatable. But then once I found the story that struck a chord with me, I set up Zoom conferences with each individual person and had an interview, kind of like what we're doing now. I allowed that person to share their story, and I wanted to see how they conveyed it to me via Zoom call. And as a filmmaker, you want to pick people that are, like I said, engaging, interesting, well-spoken. They have to be understandable. If they're in front of a camera and nobody can understand them, it's going to be a little tough for people to watch. So these were some of the things that I had to take into account. And although some of the stories that I passed up on are amazing, I did have a criteria to kind of follow, an attempt in a format.
Were they okay when you kind of said,
yeah, I mean, nobody, nobody.
"I hate you, and I hate Rocky too now"? Yeah, just joking. No, that's the thing. Anyone that loves Rocky won't be that way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And are you able to? I don't want people. I always try to be careful not to spoil anything. So I don't want to hear how any of these. I don't want to hear anything about how Rocky helped them. So I don't want you to say that. But can you give us a little bit of what each person might have suffered from? Are you allowed to say anything like that? Like somebody couldn't do X, Y, Z, now they can.
Sure. Again, I don't want to give too much away,
No.
but just to give you a basic idea, we have, everything ranging from cancer survivors, stroke survivors. I have an autistic child uh, who was actually nicknamed Mini Rocky,
Oh.
who really responds really, really well when a Rocky song or a Rocky movie is playing, um, who wouldn't respond generally that way without that in the background, which is blows my mind and makes the hair on my arm stand up. So each story is really, really heartfelt, really, really
Oh, I
heartfelt.
believe it. I believe it.
And the way that we're formatting it and putting it all together it's truly, truly remarkable. Really, really good stuff.
And do we have a release date approximately and a distribution, how it's going to be distributed?
So all of those things are still being worked out. If I had to be pinpointed with a gun to my head at this moment, I would say that Amazon Prime in July.
Oh, we're getting there.
And there's a very specific reason for that.
Oh, am I going to look stupid now?
No, you're not.
Okay.
So a very special person that we all
Oh,
follow
okay. His birthday's in July.
is
Stallone's birthday.
turning 75 in July.
Yes, it's crazy.
So my goal and my hope, if everything goes as planned, is to release this kind of as tribute to his 75th birthday.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, speaking of the big man himself, Mr. Stallone, Sly, as he likes to be called, of course. Have you spoken to him about your project? And if so, and I actually don't know the answer to everyone that's listening, everything I'm asking, none of this is pre-scripted. I don't have any of his answers, so he could tell me to shut up, Ryan. I don't know why you're asking me that. So, have you talked to Sylvester Stallone about your project? And if so, what was his response?
I have not spoken to him.
Ah, too bad. Okay.
So my goal and my hope is that, number one, above all else, I want this to be Fight Story is kind of like a visual thank you letter to Mr. Stallone. He has inspired so many people,
Hmm.
and the people that I'm bringing on board, we're just a very small group with really inspiring stories, and it's a visual thank you letter to him. And I'm praying that we can have it done and completed on Amazon Prime for July for his birthday, because I think it would just drive everything home and bring it all together.
For sure.
But he does not know. Um, I believe that he will know. He will know very soon. But I have not spoken to him about this.
I would like to tell you that my great podcast will get to his ears. It's unlikely. uh, but I do. I'll talk to you offline. Okay, so okay, that's fine. I've never spoken to Sly ever about anything because again, I just run a podcast. I don't think it's worth his time to know that I do that. But what you're doing is amazing. I think obviously, I think if he was aware of what you've done and are doing and the purpose behind it, he would be more than flattered and honored by that. And he is aware. I've talked to people that know Sly, and he is aware of what this obviously, but I mean, but he's hyper aware of what this movie and franchise has done for people. He's not oblivious to it. I know he's humbled by it, as anyone should be. So I think if he heard your story, your fight story, and these people's stories, I would could only assume that he would be honored and flattered by it. I can't speak for him, but I can only assume that he would be honored by that. And I hope he gets to hear the story and see what you're doing and providing. How did you get this financed?
It's all fully coming out of my back pocket.
Oh, you're stressing me out. You didn't set
Yeah,
up a GoFundMe or a
I just started,
Kickstarter?
I just started sweating. No, I did not. This is all fully funded by myself. So if you have another minute,
Oh yeah, yeah.
okay, good. I have another story to tell you.
Please.
So it's fully funded by myself. Everybody that I'm bringing on board to tell their stories, they're all doing it voluntarily. And I have to be honest, That's the best way for this to happen. And in my opinion, the only way for it to happen, because it's really coming from the goodness of everyone's heart. Nobody is looking for money. Nobody's looking for fame. And that's myself included. I did not start this
No.
journey
Yeah.
to become rich and famous. And, I hope that it doesn't come across like I'm trying to make money off of, the Rocky Stallone name. That is so not what we're trying to do here. It's way beyond that. So yes, I'm fully funding it myself. As a matter of fact, I was approached, I want to say about 5 months ago, by a major Hollywood producer who had gotten wind of what I was doing. And I had a nice phone call with him, and he had offered to fund my project and to pay me for my concept with a stipulation. And the stipulation was, instead of the people that I was bringing on, him and his team, they wanted to bring on pro athletes and famous actors and actresses that kind of fit the same criteria, that were inspired by Stallone and the Rocky films.
They wanted to
And
Hollywoodize it and make money off it.
mhm,
Take it away, take the story away from the common man.
bingo. And that's the first thing that popped into my head, what you just said. And I said to this gentleman, who was very gracious to offer me, and, I don't want to go into details with that, but I, very politely said to him, I think that I would like to keep who I have recruited, because I think the common person can relate most to another common person. And he respectfully disagreed, and that's fine. And I wound up turning down his offer. And the rest is really history. And from that day on, I'm funding the whole thing myself,
And
which
then
is fine.
and then you found a horse's head in your bed the next day.
Exactly. How'd you know?
Sorry, I couldn't resist. I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Okay. All right. That's my terrible. I will never do that again. I apologize. But well, good for you. That's wow, that's very admirable. And I don't think anyone listening to this interview would have felt that you're doing this for any kind of, it never occurred to me. And I'm a pretty good read of people. I don't suspect, I never thought that about this project. And so you could tell it's a love letter. And what I mean by that is, like, it's coming from the heart. But of course you want people to see it. Of course, if you get a couple of coins thrown your way, you're not going to, throw it in the river. We hope that you get your money back.
That'd be nice. And if not, that's okay too. I'm okay with that.
Now, are you? I don't want to put you on the spot. Do you have a family, wife, or anything like that, or?
I'm married with two daughters, a 13
Oh,
year old and a 10-year-old.
and your wife, I guess, is totally supportive. I can just imagine me telling my wife, "Hey, honey, I'm gonna do this little. I can barely get her to agree that I can even pay for a hosting fee for my podcast." No, I'm just joking. She's not like that. But how did you convince your wife to?
I mean, my wife knows my story. We've been together literally since high school.
Nice.
I took my wife to the prom. We're high school sweethearts. We've been together forever. So
Oh,
she knows my story. She knows the whole 9 yards. And my two daughters, believe it or not, are tremendous Rocky fans.
I
We've
believe
seen
it.
every movie together, and you know, we're a Rocky family. We've always been.
That's awesome. I love hearing it, man. I mean, honestly, John, I feel nothing but good things for you. I wish you nothing but success.
Yeah.
You feel like a kindred spirit. You truly do, and I'm truly looking forward to this release. And whether it's July or whenever it is, it'll come when it comes, and I will be purchasing it myself. I make that promise to you. I'll plug it as much as I can with the small influence that I have, my listeners. When it does come out, I hope my listeners do the same and show the support to you. Um, is there anything lastly you want to say before we close up here?
I do have one last thing, if that's
Please,
okay.
of course.
We are selling Fight Story merchandise. Now, get this. This is really cool. All of the profits from the merchandise are going towards children with autism, and that's inspired by part one of the series. So we sell that through, it's called the Bulldog website, BULLDOUGH.com website. And all of the Fight Story merchandise is going to go directly toward children with autism, which is really, really cool.
You're an absolute saint.
I don't know about that, but we try.
No, it truly is remarkable. So I will put that in the description link of the show. Please, I'll get that information from you after the interview, so we can plug that. That's awesome. Even your merchandise doesn't give you your money back, boy. Maybe if there's a sequel, maybe this does. Maybe take that offer from that producer after this gets released. Fine, we'll let the Hollywood elite come in. They can do their schmucky stuff. Sure. All right, John. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and I wish you all the success. And please don't be a stranger. Let's keep in touch.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Thank you very much.